Okay, so I want to make sure and open the meeting. My Blackfoot or my Siksika name is First to See the Morning Star. So now that we have called the meeting to order, in our Blackfoot way or Siksika way, we usually have our elder open us with a prayer to start us all in a good way. So I've asked my good friend Shirley if she could come up here and open us in a good way, just to ground ourselves, make sure we're all here, kind of relax before we get into the business, and then I'll go into the land acknowledgement.
Okay, gusto ni Dani ko apis sabiati. My native name, traditional name is Looking Around with Eyes Women. So that's my native name, and I'll just start with a opening prayer. I'll say it in English. I think we've got two Siksika that are here, and I know they understand the language, but I'll say it in English. Okay. Father God, in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, we come before you, Father. We just thank you, Lord, for this opportunity for me. We just commit this meeting to you, dear God. We thank you, Lord, for this organization, True North, that they're there to help our ladies and our men with domestic violence. We thank you for all the staff that are working in this organization. I thank you for the board members that are putting in their time, volunteer time to do what they can to help the organization. So Father, we just commit this meeting to you. We just ask for your blessing upon every person that's here. And then we just commit this meeting to you, dear God, that it'll be run according to your will. It'll be, we'll continue, Lord, to work on these goals, the vision, the mission for True North in a good way. So we ask for your blessing, Father God, on this agency and all the clientele and all the other support resources that are from Strathmore and from Siksika. So Father, we just commit this meeting to you. In the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, Father, we pray. Amen. And now I'll just read the land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that we live, work, and play on the traditional territories of the peoples of Treaty 7. This includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Kaina, the Piikani, and Siksika First Nations, as well as the Tsuut'ina First Nation and Stoney Nakoda Nation. We also recognize the Métis Nation of Alberta and the Inuit who call this land home. I'm going to include the Skat Piikani, which is our tribe from Montana. They're still part of the Blackfoot Confederacy. There's 4 tribes. We honor the presence, knowledge, cultures, and contributions of all Indigenous peoples across Alberta. We recognize that all Albertans are treaty people with a shared responsibility to learn from the past, engage in the present, and work toward a future rooted in peace, friendship, and mutual understanding. With gratitude, we celebrate the strength, wisdom, and resilience of Indigenous communities, and we commit to listening, learning, and growing together in the spirit of reconciliation.
Thank you, Shirley, for that. And in our Siksika way or Blackfoot way, we always go, we put our hand to our hearts, we take in her prayer and starting in a good way. So from there, I'm going to call up Courtney to do some introductions. She probably knows everybody in this room, so I'm going to let her go forward.
All right. So my name is Courtney Helfrich, and I'm the Executive Director of True North Society. I'd like to start by introducing our Board of Directors. So we've got Joyce Lee as our Board Chair. She unfortunately couldn't make it tonight. Kobe Royal, our Vice Chair. Crystal Frost, Board Treasurer. Thank you. Christina Melton is our Board Secretary. Shirley Spotted Eagle is our Board of Director. Josh Petit. Is he not here yet? Okay, he is coming, I believe. Blair Eckenswiller and Jennifer Franson. Also not here yet? No. Okay, perfect. And then I'll move into our leadership team. So we have Carly Cole, who is our Manager of Programs and Client Services. We've got Amanda Vanderland, a Manager of Research and Development. Joni Chiswick is our Manager of Finance and Operations. Shavana Bielik is one of our team leads, and she unfortunately couldn't make it tonight. And then we have Myra Sanchez, one of our team leads as well. Here she is, yes. And Josh, maybe give a little wave. Josh is one of our. Perfect. So this is our agenda for this evening, and I'll turn it back over to Coach Sue.
Thank you. So for the agenda, we've called the order. Oh, no, that's fine. Yeah, approve the agenda, then we'll go through to approve the minutes, auditor's report, message from the chair, help seekers, message from the ED, True North, 2025 report, new business, election of, officers, correspondence, and then adjournment. Next slide. Motion to approve agenda. Sure. Can I get a seconder? Sorry. Thank you, Josh. And so before we go forward, taking minutes. Oh, good, thank you. I was looking for someone. Thank you so much. Okay, good. All right. Now, what we need next is approval of last year's minutes. Can I get a motion to approve last year's minutes? Shirley? I get a seconder, one of the board members from this. Claire, thank you. Any questions from last year's AGM minutes? I know the board member has reviewed these online under our own time. Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll go on to the next. So we have, right, thank you. Okay, so we're going to move forward with the auditor's report. So we'll let her present, and then once she presents, then we'll make some motions. Is that okay? Oh, sure.
Okay, super. All right, lovely. So good evening, everyone. My name is Erin Gregory with Gregory Harriman and Associates. Our firm did the audit this year for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2025. So I'm here tonight to highlight some key points and areas of interest in the financial statements and hopefully provide a little bit of understanding. So we have issued a clean audit report with a regular qualification relating to cash donations from fundraising. So this means that we have concluded that the financial statements have been appropriately in all material respects been prepared in accordance with Canadian accounting standards for not-for-profit organizations. So the shelter uses fund accounting. So that's the reason why there's 3 columns for 2025. So to keep things simple, I'll just be reviewing the 2025 total. So overall, the financial position of the shelter is strong. We have current assets of just over 845,000, which outweigh the current liabilities of 308,000. So this means that the shelter has more than enough assets to cover off liabilities due within the next fiscal period. So cash and short-term investments totaled 822,000 and have decreased by about 266,000 from 2024, mainly due to the deficit experienced in 2025. So of the $822,000 of cash, 635,000 is either externally or internally restricted, meaning that it is not available for general operating use. So the net book value of capital assets totals just over 2.1 million and is made up of land, building, furniture, and equipment held by the society. It also includes the design costs associated with the new building project. So total assets at 2.98 million at the end of March. So moving on to the liability section of the statement of financial position, we have liabilities totaling 484,000. So this balance is made up of accounts payable, deferred contributions, and unamortized or capital contributions. So accounts payable and accrued liabilities at 122,000 at the top there, made up of trade payables, accrued liabilities, and staff-related payables, including vacation, wages, and payroll remittances payable. So the deferred contributions represent operating revenue received for a specific purpose. but has not yet been spent. So operating deferred contributions totaled 187,000 and consists of a bursary, casino funds, federal grants, and other various grants and donations received with restrictions. So the unamortized capital contributions of 175,000 represent grant funding received for specific purposes and spent on capital projects. So the funding received and spent is recognizing as revenue at the same rate the related asset is amortized. And within the equity section, the shelter holds just under 502,000 in reserve, which have been internally restricted by the board for future operation or capital use. And these reserves are fully funded by cash held by the society. So the society's revenue, this slide here, totaled just over 2 million. And with the main sources of revenue being provincial grants and other grant government subsidies. So the organization's overall revenues have increased from the previous year by about 51,000 due to utilization of prior year's deferred grant funding. On the expense side, we have 2.15 million being the total this year. So overall expenses have increased by about 193,000 due to increase in staffing and administrative costs. But at the end of the day, the shelter has a deficit of expenses over revenues of 142,000. So this deficit is a result of donation revenue coming in under budget and various expense accounts coming in over budget. Anyone have any questions? Thanks for your attention.
Thank you. So I'll just ask again, anyone have any questions on the financial statements? Okay. So we're good with the auditor's report. Can I get a motion to approve the report? You, I get a seconder. Secretary, thank you. All approved, board members, good. Thank you. Okay, now the fun stuff. We're going to move to the next, the message from the chair. Perfect, I will get you to read her out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I am not Joyce. She sends her regrets, but she did send a really beautiful statement for all of us tonight that I'm going to read to you. Just pretend I'm Joyce. Good evening, everyone. As we gather at this year's annual general meeting, I'm filled with a deep sense of pride, not only for what we've accomplished over the past year, but how we've done it with courage, with clarity, and most of all, with heart. True North has been growing in reach, in responsibility, and in impact. And with that growth has come moments of challenge, uncertainty, and change. But I want to pause and honor something we don't often talk about in leadership: discomfort. Recently, I was struck by a message delivered by Sandra O of Dartmouth's 2025 commencement. She said, "Nothing has taught me more than being with discomfort. It can be our greatest learning opportunity, and it is also inevitable." That resonates deeply with where we are today. Growth, especially the kind that is meaningful and sustainable, rarely comes without friction. This year, we faced hard questions and we've moved through transitions. We've asked ourselves what it means to lead with integrity, to stay grounded in our values, even when that path isn't clear. And through this discomfort, something powerful has happened. We've sharpened our purpose. We've leaned into new ways of working. We've deepened our empathy and commitment to one another and to those that we serve. We've begun to see discomfort not as a threat, but as an invitation to listen more closely and to reflect more honestly and to act more boldly. As Sandra O said, if you can train yourself not to turn away, but to lean in and be with your discomfort, that trust that it might be telling you something that you don't yet know, it can help you develop an inner strength and will enable you to face the challenges that life presents you with without losing your values or your sense of self along the way. At True North, that's exactly what we're doing, staying steady in who we are, even as we evolve, holding space for growth and for grace. Thank you to everyone, our board, our staff, our leadership team, our community partners who've shown up, who've stayed curious and have chosen courage over comfort. It's not always easy, but it's worth it. And here's to the work ahead, guided by discomfort, grounded in purpose, and shaped by the values that continue to define us. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna have to ask your name.
Carly.
Carly.
Yes.
You, Carly. I was like, it's not Joyce. Thank you so much.
Yes.
So we don't need to move forward with approval of the presentation. We'll go with the next one, help seekers presentation. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. We're visitors from Calgary, but don't hold it against us. We come bearing gifts. So on that spirit of learning and discomfort, this is going to be a presentation that wraps up a really interesting project that we took on with True North. And I think there's nothing like Providence when you look at the symbols in some of this work. That's our logo, Help Seeker, and that's your logo, True North. So I don't think you copied us, and we didn't copy you, but here we are, and it couldn't be a better match. Our work is in the data and technology space, so today we're going to be talking to you about that, and your work is in the heart work. So we're more on the brain and analytics side. But I think what we're going to bring to you today is something that hopefully helps you look at this community a little bit differently. We're not the experts in the community, you are, but we are experts in data, and we are folks that get to do this in communities everywhere in Canada. So this is a huge privilege we take seriously, and the insights we can bring to you today, hopefully you can apply to this work. And it's all about this work specifically, and it's all about your guys' data and kind of bringing that back to you and saying, what does this all mean? Where is this taking us in the long run? So I encourage you to not take it as a kind of a lecture or anything like that. It's a data story. It's a story, and the artifacts that we're going to tell that story through are going to be data artifacts, but they represent people's stories, and every single number is somebody that might have come through your doors, or somebody that you might get to meet, or somebody that should be coming through your doors that doesn't even know you exist. So that's the context. I should have said I'm Alina, and I'm the co-founder CEO, and this is Jill. Jill took on the hard work of pulling all of this together as well, so she's going to have a big role to play tonight. But I couldn't help myself either to kick us off. So with that, we wanted to, I should get it out of my own way here, but we wanted to frame the conversation about data in the bigger story around systems. And those of you that have been doing this work a long time know that none of these unique stories are one-offs, that they're part of a bigger systemic challenge that we're seeing come across the entire, well, honestly, it's the entire globe. We do work with communities that tackle this in very, very different contexts across the country, from Inuit communities and in the north, all the way to the downtown east side, all the way to the really remote northern Ontario, for instance. So this isn't a unique experience. That means it's systemic, right? That means it's a symptom of something else. So what we're hearing across the country is that the crisis calls have increased. So the story that this is happening here is not just yours, for sure, and the complexity has shifted. So there's a little bit of, there's a lot to say about the impacts that COVID has had. And even though we don't want to talk about it anymore, when you look at some of the historical experiences of trauma in our recent memory, I know for our Indigenous community members, this is, you can write the books and then some. For those of us that have grown up in the Western world, our closest relevance might be our grandparents going into the Great Wars, for instance, and then coming back home with that trauma, and how that trauma did absolutely manifest in interpersonal violence in European homes, and here we are. So that trauma has repeated in a really profound way with COVID. And what we're seeing it currently is a type of denial, a societal level denial around that, i.e. we just don't want to look. We just don't want to look underneath of what's happening. So some of the things we're going to unearth for you today are going to challenge you to live with that a little bit tonight, with that discomfort of what has that done to Strathmore? What has that done to the population here? And importantly, what does that mean for this community of folks that are coming together to do something about it? And then the additional element that you have on the go is the rurality aspect. I heard Courtney saying that some folks in decision-making roles say, you're not really rural because you're so close to Calgary, and from folks that do this in different communities that are more like an Airdrie or a Cochrane, you really are different in that way. You do have that agricultural base. You have these a sense of distance from the center that other communities that might consider themselves ex-urban or suburban do not have. So that element is going to come through today as well. So that's the symptoms and systems framing for today. We will leave you with quite a bit of hope, though, because we also got the data from the center itself, and the case for support writes itself, because every single thing we're going to present to you today as a symptom of a systemic problem, you're taking on and you're showing results in exactly that. So everything you're coming up against, you have an answer to, which is really, really exciting, and really exciting to see with numbers, not anecdotes. Stories are absolutely critical, but decision makers want to see the data. And I think you as community stakeholders want to see that too, right? That there are numbers to back up what we're doing here. It's another way of validating the direction. So that's setting the context, and now I'll pass it to Jill to take you through the data walk or data story, if you will.
Okay, absolutely. So, like Alina said, a lot of what we're going to present here is based in history, it's based in context, and I think particularly the violence against women sector, sort of history of it, has often focused a lot historically on sort of just that incidence of violence. It's a person hit another person. I didn't feel safe at home, I had to leave. But we know that there's so many other factors here that are at play when we're thinking about what are the conditions that have really allowed that to happen. And that's not to take away accountability from individuals, because that's absolutely a part of it, but it's how do we start to acknowledge and sort of have our eyes a little bit wider to what's happening in society that we can pay attention to not only help us respond to those instances when they take place, but to be able to see what's coming and have a little bit more of a proactive response. Our lens for this analysis, I know that True North works with all sorts of relationship violence. We've tried to take a lens that is, again, less personal, a little bit more, what's the system, what are the institutions behind it? We look at data from multiple forms of violence, and so knowing that it's not always just sort of physical abuse, but we know that things like economic control, financial abuse, coercive control are at play. And we also try to take a look at this from as intersectional of a perspective as we can. So my experience isn't going to equal your experience or equal your experience. So just being aware of some of those identity aspects. Like Alina mentioned, we do have the benefit of taking data from across Canada. Where we have been able to, we've tried to get as localized of a snapshot in Strathmore and Wheatland as we can. We spoke with community members. We looked at a lot of your local data sets. We're also going to bring in some of the broader provincial and national trends just to give you that context and give you a sense of what's happening. And of course, just because some of the data is a little bit older, we've pulled as much as we can that's as recent as possible, just to make sure that you're getting the most up-to-date information. So 7 pillars that we'll talk about today. First off, we're going to start looking at some of the really bigger pictures, the bigger structures, if you will. And these aren't all areas that you necessarily have control over, but it's impacting who's showing up at the shelters. It's impacting who's not showing up. And context, again, is super, super critical here. We'll then take a look at some of the structures that are a little bit more to do with our social networks. And so when we think about our families, our friends, our neighbors, who's in the schools, who's in our workplaces, there's different factors that are starting to affect that as well. And then we'll look at some of the economic conditions, which is really foundational, when we think about exchanges of capital, exchanges of value, access to basic needs, access to things that we need to survive. That economic situation is going to be super, super critical for community members. And so we'll try to cover all of these as quickly as we can. And so first one that we have is housing. True North is in such an interesting position because they do deal with a lot of folks who are facing houselessness or housing insecurity. When we take a look at some of the data that shows up for clients that are coming out of True North, there's a lot of positives that are happening here. And so notably with the safety planning that you do, with the case management, with the connections to supports, there are tons and tons of clients who are able to find housing, which is a really fantastic outcome. At the same time, we know that also there's a substantial portion of clients who are unable to find that housing, or at least unable to find a stable place to live after they're leaving the shelter. And so this can include things like going into a hotel or a motel. This can include things like going to a different emergency shelter. This can be things like couch surfing or precarious housing. And this really isn't sort of a product of, people aren't looking. Often at times it's they're looking, but what's out there isn't affordable. It's what's out there, there's a long wait list for. It's if I did want to move, the barriers for me to be able to get into that place are so big that it's difficult for me to do that. And so what you're seeing as a result is really some of that precariousness happening, but also so what you're seeing as a result, it's harder for people to find housing for a number of reasons, but people are also staying in the shelter a lot longer than they have before. So previously, whereas people were able to stay for maybe a few days, a couple of weeks, that has now gone up to almost a month. And again, not to say that people aren't trying, not to say that people aren't accessing that support, but where you go after you're in that shelter or after you're in that emergency situation is going to be something that organizations like True North are up against. At the same time, it's very easy to say, okay, well, why not just build more houses for people, right? Seems like an easy solution. When we take a look at some of the data for Strathmore as well, your population is growing at a fairly steady rate, but the rate at which you're building new houses isn't keeping up with that too. And so if you think about sort of how affordability has become a challenge for people, how finding a place that's suitable for them has become a challenge, and you're not building enough to keep up with that population growth, you're going to find yourself under more pressure. The second piece is that we'll take a look at mental health. And again, this is highly intertwined with, I think, a lot of what we're seeing in COVID, in schools happening. But the long story short here is that Strathmore actually has a lot higher rates of mental health issues presenting in emergency rooms than the rest of Alberta. And so when we look at things like people who are showing up in the ER for anxiety, showing up for other mental health issues, returning to the emergency room actually is pretty significant in Strathmore as well. That tells us that there's something about folks' well-being or something about their ability to cope that's not quite keeping up with the rest of the province. Now, again, a number of reasons for that. What access to supports, access to psychiatrists is a lot more difficult in Alberta. But when you couple that with the fact that a lot of individuals who are experiencing abuse or experiencing violence are, experiencing that emotional distress as a result, or if they did have mental health issues before, that might have exacerbated it, or it might be that a person who's perpetrating violence is experiencing those mental health issues too. Those are all things that are at play here. And again, so not to say that everybody who has a mental health issue is going to show up or that they won't show up, but it is going to impact, the nature of the things that you're dealing with. Just a couple of notes too on substance use. We know that a lot of times folks will rely on substance use for coping issues. If they're dealing with trauma, that can often just create more negative health cycles as far as harm. And of course, we don't want people falling into that. And then you've got sort of the rural aspect of your community. The rurality piece, I think, is really, really interesting. Because we know that a lot of rural areas and rural services in Alberta are underfunded compared to urban areas. But you've also got some different sort of cultural pieces that are at play. And so, especially in small communities, that can often mean that you are have tighter social networks, you know your neighbors, you know the kids the people who your kids play soccer with, the people at your workplace. So that's often a really a strength to build on. At the same time, if you know the policeman who you're reporting a dangerous situation to, you're going to be a lot less likely to report it to. If you know that your neighbors might, have a certain perception of you, or you're embarrassed of that, you might not reach out for help. And so there is that aspect of sort of privacy and how tight communities are that can make it easier or more difficult, just different in a rural situation, to look for help. We also know that the risk of lethality in rural areas for people who are experiencing violence is fairly significant. It was just under 3 in 4 survivors who do danger assessments in rural communities reported that they were at severe or extreme danger of being killed by a current or former partner. And so that's not something to take lightly, especially when we're hearing those self-reports of the risks that people are experiencing. So this brings us into, we've talked sort of about some of those bigger structures. And again, there's things that you can control, and but you can't control everything. Some of the more social aspects of things are also at play here. And so we know that during COVID, a lot of people's sort of social lives and their social connections went online. And I took a look at some of this data, and this was 2022, so a few years old, but it was something like 99% of Canadians aged 15 to 24 were online daily. 70% of them were active on social media, if I believe. And it was something like 60% of that 70% were experienced or exposed to hate content daily. And so I think it's very easy for us to all sort of get caught in a cycle of like scrolling through your phones or reading the news or being desensitized to things. But when you think about sort of the long-term impacts of that, whether it's your view of what is a healthy relationship, your view of what is happening in the world, how am I taking these things seriously or not seriously, or being able to cope with what's happening, that's a really, really significant part. And especially when we think about preventing violence and sort of the importance of being able to recognize those situations, it's super, super critical for our outlooks on life. And we also know that kids, in particular, after COVID, were more likely to report poor mental health after COVID. So in other words, I think that particularly with youth, you're going to start to see some trickle-down effects of that throughout the years, even though we're out of the pandemic and we don't want to talk about it anymore. There are reports from numbers of different organizations that trauma continues. Of course, not everybody's going to experience that equally. So discrimination and social marginalization do come into play here. And again, it's when people feel isolated from their communities, they might be more likely to perpetrate, they might be more likely to be victimized. And having that sort of strong social network of support and trust in supports too is something that's going to help a lot here. This has a lot to do with folks' identity based on self-reported data. And so we were looking at just some of the differences if you were Indigenous, if you were LGBTQ, if you were a younger person, if you were a newcomer. All of those were factors that indicated in the data that you were more likely to have experienced unfair treatment or discrimination. And we know that can fuel vulnerability to harm. And then finally, sort of when we look at family relationships for people, again, if you have a strong family, that's a protective factor for you. Think your moms, dads, aunts, and uncles, all really positive things to be able to lean on for that support, especially when you're forming early relationships. For kids that don't have that, or who have gone through traumatic experiences, whether that's COVID or otherwise, or passed down through generations, the risk of violence gets a lot higher for them. And so they're 7 times more likely to be victimized by violence. They're 8 times more likely to perpetrate violence or inflict harm on somebody else. And again, I think that those are all things to be taken really seriously. Again, with the caveats, not everybody who's experiencing trauma is going to show up in these spaces. Not everybody who has negative childhood experiences will show up in these spaces. There's a lot of resilience at play and a lot of ability to bounce back. But what we want to make sure of is that we're creating the right conditions so that there's a lesser likelihood in the first place of people having to go through those situations. Okay, last one I'll touch on just really quickly is some of the economic conditions. This is a little bit of data just from the government of Alberta. They posted their economic outlook last year. And essentially what it's telling us here is just economic growth is going to be sort of steady, not growing as quickly as we wanted to. When folks do have access to jobs, that's a really strong protective factor for them. And so that's sources of income, that's sources of community for people. But sort of when household spending gets down or people's pocketbooks get a little bit tighter, they might be more hesitant to look for help. They might be more hesitant to access things that they need to. We also know that if individuals are not in a position to be able to work, that social assistance is much actually below where it needs to be. We looked at some of the gaps between sort of what's a poverty line and how much are people able to access through programs like AISH or other social assistance. There's a pretty big gap there. And so just thinking about sort of the vulnerability that adds for people if you don't have enough money to flee a dangerous situation, if you have another person in control of your finances, those are just all risk factors that can be taken advantage of. And so again, things to be managed, things to be aware of, just about the types of issues that people might present with. Okay, so that brings us into some of the implications for programming. And I truly don't want to leave you with all of this as like a negative outlook. I think that doing these social needs assessment is such an important part of being able to look forward and not only see these signals and see what's happening, because it is so important and it is affecting how people are showing up, but it's what you do about that information that's going to make the difference. And so if you're looking at these not as opportunities to say, oh my gosh, everybody's going to be in so much trouble, but hey, there's going to be challenges ahead, but we can do things to start to predict it. We can do things to start to get ahead of it. We can design our programming in a way that's not going to let people get to those negative situations in the first place. I think that's really where the opportunity lies. And so I'll turn it over to Alina just to wrap us up with sort of what this means for programming and take it from here.
Awesome. Was that too much data? No, you're lucky her links didn't work. That's where the data actually was. So we'll send it along. We'll send it along. And we said to Courtney, we should do a webinar on this because most places in Canada are communities like this. They're small communities. They don't have the benefit of doing this kind of work, right? And the fact that you guys had data for us to mine is huge. The reason I'm looking at my phone is because the team finished an analysis today of your data. And so as I'm wrapping up, I think it'd be really cool to give y'all a quiz. And let's see how you think True North did on taking on these challenges that we talked about. So the first concept here is around prevention. I'll just break it down. So prevention is attacking the issue before it becomes an issue. In this case, the violence happening, people showing up at the door. Intervention, providing that safe place, and then that stability, so the healing. So once people leave, they don't come back, because ideally, we love our clients, but we ideally don't ever see them again, right? Or we see them in a very different context. So a lot of the domestic violence world focuses in this intervention space. That's actually not what True North does. And if you take a look around, you'll see there's activity here. There's lots of work happening here. And there's definitely lots of work healing that lasts. There's lots of work that happens once clients leave as well. And the reason for that, and Courtney's going to do a much better job explaining it than myself, is because you're actually listening to what people are telling you. It's the ultimate thing. There's best practices for sure, but if you're listening to the lived experience and what people say they want, they always say we're always divided by the issue that manifests first, or whatever your kind of go-to domain specialization is. Oh, you're a mental health provider. I'm only going to deal with your mental health. Oh, your education. We've got a teacher in the room. Your education, you're only going to deal with literacy and finance. The reality is all these issues coincide. So when the program team pitches, hey, we should do housing and we should do teaching and we should do cooking classes and we should do a hamper, they actually know what they're talking about, because these issues are really on top of each other. And the more you try to break them apart, you're actually making it worse. So a lot lot of this stopping the violence before it starts, this team actually has a whole program, and majority of their touch points happen not in the shelter, they happen earlier on in the prevention world. So I'll tell you some of the numbers there. And then the other thing that they do with when people are in here, one of the lived experience interviews that I was listening to, they talked about how they were experiencing the violence and they didn't know. They thought they were the abuser. Like that's how messed up that, and they didn't know until they came here and they were taught what abuse meant, that they realized that that's what was happening. So if you learn that that's an issue down here when they're in the shelter, it doesn't naturally make sense that you should create a program that's going to teach people how to recognize the signs of abuse. But typically your organizations like this don't do that, right? So I think it's really cool that you do. You're touching all the entire prevention continuum in a little shop in Strathmore. So I think that's really commendable. You were a very willing and lovely audience to share this with. So so with that, maybe I'll hand it over to you, Courtney, or to our beautiful host, Ruby. Thank you.
Alina and Jill, I know research, sometimes we think of it as I guess two-dimensional, right? It's just on the screen, but really the data speaks words, and going through being an Indigenous person here in Alberta, we're always, my mom would always be, we can't be a statistic, you know, we can't end up on because in our communities at times we're the highest in the jail systems, we're the highest in the shelters, usually we're the highest in the, I guess, with the poverty, with the accessing these needs. However, there are many of our Indigenous people in our leadership, and I just want to acknowledge one of our leaders from Siksika, Marcia Wolf-Caller, from the Siksika Council. So thank you for being here and hearing this. So one of the, also I wanted to mention is just honoring all the families that you have spoken to, gathering the data and having this information, because without data, that's hard to go to seek out dollars and funding to get a lot of the supports needed in the community. So I just want to say thank you again and honor the families who you had spoke with. From there, I'm going to move forward to, or move on to our message from the ED, and I'll let you take that away.
Thank you guys so much, speakers, Alina and Jill, for your presentation and just all the work that's gone into this. It's been like a 7-month project so far. So a lot of work has gone into this, and it's really going to set us up for success as we continue to advocate for more funding, success for our families and the clients that we serve as well, to be able to put this data to use and implement in different programs. So thank you. Thank you so much. All right, so it is my pleasure to provide thoughts to everybody on this past year as the leader of True North Society. It's been an honor to work with this incredible organization and the board of directors, as well as our leadership team and the staff, to achieve our strategic goals annually and support vulnerable people in their healing journey. We continue to seek new and innovative ways to empower those affected by domestic violence to create a safe environment for all. Connection, compassion, courage, empowerment, and integrity are the values that drive how we show up, how we support, and how we engage with our community. This past year, while leaning on our values to help guide us, we had many accomplishments and achieved many of our strategic goals. Definitely not without trials and tribulations, but we continued to show up, even when it was hard, and we did so with courage, compassion, connection, empowerment, and integrity. What a year it has been, and we are so grateful to have you all here this evening to share with you the impacts and achievements. I'll start with our people pillar of our strategic plan. So True North values our employees and wants to ensure that every voice is heard. As we launched our annual employee engagement survey with very positive results and feedback, we were able to launch our very first ever employee recognition program. To help create more consistency and stability, we also completed the review of our internal processes and procedures for recruitment, onboarding, and orientation. As we work towards streamlining our HR practices, we know how this supports longer-term staff retention and satisfaction. We continue to work with CUPE Local 4731 to achieve our first collective agreement. Our Workplace Health and Safety Committee has been extremely active this year, working to keep us safe. We held our first annual Staff Appreciation Day and Safety Day, and are looking forward to the years to come. We work closely with our community partners to develop working relationships. And this past year, we had signed our first MOU with Trellis, and we continue to work together on various cooking groups, teen drop-in programs, and the further development of the Kickstand programming. Our partnership and knowledge sharing with Siksika Nation and the Siksika Support Center continues to be enhanced. Through our MOU, we work in partnership together to support people from Siksika who are fleeing violence. This has been an incredible partnership. We are very grateful for our Siksika friends and neighbors and our ability to work together to address and prevent domestic violence in new and innovative ways. This partnership has shared so much with our team and families, including ribbon skirt making activities, beading, as well as many new resources and knowledge of traditional healing practices. Our own Indigenous liaison role came to an end this year, as it was a term grant ending in March. Through this grant, we were able to offer clients access to elders on site and trips to Blackfoot Crossing Historical Site to enhance our knowledge and understanding of our history and truth and reconciliation. We established new partnerships with Bold Sun Community College as well as Bow Valley College to create opportunity for further education and internship. Onto our clients and services pillar. So having our clinical supports on site for our clients this past year has been instrumental to our clients' well-being. We piloted a program this year to have group sessions completed in shelter a few times a week with a mix of both outreach clients and in-shelter clients. Restructuring group this way and allowing for more innovation has been so helpful to our clients' healing journeys. We were able to secure off-the-site locations for outreach to allow for more confidentiality of our current building and decrease barriers. My apologies. These were already established previously, but due to COVID, we were able to reestablish them and get back into these communities. As you previously heard, we were able to complete our social needs assessment this year, and we'll work to incorporate the results of this into our program planning and future strategic goals. We continue to explore opportunities for children to attend school while in shelter, and we are proud to share that we are currently piloting a program to support children with education and routine in shelter, and more to come next year when we have more data throughout this year operating this pilot program. Into quality, so we continue to work to ensure ease of access and navigation to our website. Our most recent analytics report was very positive with lots of engagement. We completed the grant this past year to support with going digital. With the help of ACWS, we are seeking to move to a new database designed to support with enhanced data collection. With this will come opportunity to go completely paperless. Our staff have had the opportunity to train the trainer for nonviolent crisis intervention to train our staff on site. This is an incredibly well-recognized and highly credible certification, and it's best practice for all staff to obtain across the shelter sector. We've engaged experts and consultants to support with brand and communication strategy to support True North with the continued momentum of our new brand, as well as to continue to build more relationships in our community and with stakeholders. This has allowed us to build and secure our donor portfolio to ensure the sustainability and growth of True North, as well as positive community relationships and further awareness of True North as an expert resource in addressing and preventing domestic violence. And finally, on to growth. So in 2019, we developed a business plan as a case for support for second stage and transitional housing. In 2021, we developed our 5-year strategic plan and identified longer-term supports for housing for individuals fleeing domestic violence as a top priority. In 2022, we purchased land in Strathmore to build affordable housing for those fleeing violence with our own internal restricted funds. In 2024, we completed the design for this affordable housing project. Now, in 2025, we have applied for various funding sources to help us achieve our goals and await the outcome. We are hopeful to be successful and announce this soon so we can move forward with this project and support more people and their children and truly break the cycle of violence. We have many plans for various fundraising events and awareness campaigns in the community this year to continue our momentum of our rebrand and awareness of True North. We know people are struggling. With the housing crisis, cost of living, and inflation, we want to be part of the solution. We will keep pushing forward, building momentum, and advocating for our project until it is standing tall, ready to support more people who've been affected by trauma and domestic violence in rebuilding their lives. Because together, we walk the path with those in crisis, honoring the past, providing support in the present, and awakening hope for the future. We look forward to seeing what we can achieve together this next year. Thank you for your continued belief in us and as experts in the work that we do. We truly could not do it without all of our partners, stakeholders, community, and every single one of you sitting in this room. So thank you.
I'm not sure if someone from the leadership.
Yeah, call on the leadership for us.
Yes, I know. Okay, so one of the things is I had a meeting in here. No, come on, come on, come on. While you guys are coming up, well, and it gets warm in here. So
Yes.
yes, and I'm probably very shiny and it's good for the skin. So just like you're gonna hear the spar.
We're almost done. We'll turn the back.
Yes, it is a very, I don't know, spa-like is the right word. Voice.
Tropical.
What's that? Florini. But that's okay. So hello again. I'm Carly. Just thank you all again for being here tonight. Myself and my colleagues, Amanda and Myra, just have a short presentation for you, just talking a little bit about our reach this year and kind of where we're going in the future. So this will be kind of the last of the speaking for today. I've been with the organization since 2016. I'm incredibly invested in the work that this organization does, and it means a lot to me to be able to stand up here and share this with you tonight. So maybe. Great. Okay. So True North is a shelter, yes, but we also operate a 24-hour helpline, and I would say that this is at the core of our programming. It's where support, safety, and change begins with the very first call that someone makes, and just bear in mind how hard it is for people to actually pick up that phone and ask for help when thinking about this helpline. So last year we had 1,431 calls. That averages out, I think, to about 3 to 4 per day. And each of those calls, when we look at the data, averages out to about 15 to 20 minutes spent per call per day. Now it's not just that call. So once that request comes through, our team is working on tons of steps. So that's safety planning, that's creating packing lists with people. We're arranging for pet safekeeping for folks, arranging transportation and the like, and then of course all of the documentation and the paperwork that goes along with it. So many of you guys know that we are exceptional in the domestic violence, family abuse world because we offer help to everyone of every gender. So for those of you that don't know, True North was actually the very first shelter in Canada that took men who were experiencing abuse back in 1993. And I'm very proud to report that there are now 5 shelters in this province that take people of any gender. Yeah. We've had lots of interesting findings this year. One that really stuck out to me is I had looked at the data, not from this year, but the previous 5 years. And in those previous 5 years, we had about 17% of people say that stayed longer than a month, than 30 days, 17%. Just this last year, when I ran those exact same numbers, that number increased to 42% of people that are staying with us are staying now longer than 30 days. So I think it's more than double, and it's speaking to what we're seeing on the ground, this housing crisis, inflation, and the like. So there's tons of barriers to safety, obviously housing costs, barriers to employment, childcare is a huge barrier for a lot of the folks that we serve, as well as like reliable transportation. We're in a rural community. We don't have public transportation, and then just their own experiences. So one other thing I'll just say to this is you'll often, you'll hear me try to use the word abuse versus the term violence. Not to say that we don't work in domestic violence, we do, and that's a term we use. It's not a bad word or anything. But when I say violence, your brain automatically is going to think like hit, kick, punch. And that physical violence is part of what we do for sure, but it's not the only part. So some things that we're seeing major spikes in is like technological abuse, things like apps for stalking, devices. We've seen tracking devices on cars, apps used to like spy on people, really kind of terrifying things. And it's just getting like stronger and stronger with AI and everything coming out. We are equipped to deal with this, I will say, but because it changes so rapidly, we're in a constant cycle of learning and relearning to stay on top of all of this technology. Shelter, yes, is a blanket term for what we do. There's so much more than just a safe place to stay, though. The team works with folks with all sorts of issues: housing, employment, income support, childcare, basic needs, counseling access, transportation is a huge one. On any given day, you might find one of our team members at court trying to help somebody get a protection order, and you might have another team member at the zoo with a family trying to create like resiliency and kind of that healthy bonding and attachment. You might also have somebody talking to Paths, which is a partner in Calgary that supports with like wearable safety devices for people that are in extremely high risk situations. Or, organizing shelter movers to have somebody move into their new place and helping somebody with referrals to get furniture and household goods. So no two families are ever the same. And the beauty of our services is we don't have to operate within a box. So we flex, we adapt, we expand, and we're kind of just always morphing to meet the unique needs of every single person that walks through our doors. And outreach. So imagine you find yourself, you're feeling unsafe no matter where you go. You are having like a really hard time finding suitable housing, affording the day-to-day needs. You are lost. You don't know how to navigate the family court system, but all these things are piled on you. But let's say you've got a friend or a family member who has a safe place for you to stay, short-term, maybe long-term, who knows? So you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, I have a safe place to stay, so I don't need a shelter. So that's just out for me. And that's not the case at all. So what our outreach team does is it's shelter without the shelter. So all of the things that one would access, our outreach team does for folks that are living in community, and the reach for that is massive. So we're not just Strathmore and Wheatland. We go as far up as like Three Hills, Drumheller, Trochu. There's a beautiful map here actually done by our public educator and our social work practicum students. So please check that out. But yeah, the outreach workers, they just create those pathways to the next steps for a safe and sustainable future for folks. And this one is very near and dear to my heart. This is the program where I actually started quite a while ago with True North. I love our public education program, and our public educator Danica is here, and our other past public educator Amanda is here. So you get that question, okay, well, how do we end family violence and abuse? Isn't that the goal? Absolutely, it's the goal. It's my goal to work myself out of a job. I hope I can one day. But this is really where education steps in. So this is folks attending schools, workplaces, community spaces, talking about red flags, healthy relationships, responses to abuse. How do you help somebody who's experiencing it? That knowledge can help create and maintain healthy relationships. It's the foundation for preventing abuse in the first place. So our educators, we're proud to say they're available year-round, always free to speak in any classroom to children and youth about how they can create safety for themselves and others, preventing violence before it starts.
All right, and so thank you all for coming. My name is Myra. I'm one of the team leads here. And so just to continue with what Carney's saying about programming here in True North, it's just more in-house. So we actually have a home library. At True North, we have a free home library located at our communal area, and it's open to all children and youth, giving them the freedom to borrow books at any time. And this simple resource just helps encourage family bonding, reduces the stress, and brings a sense of normalcy during their stay with us. And so the other is the family enjoyment program. And so this one is very special because it gives families a chance to build positive memories together. It focuses on strengthening family, healthy violence-free relationships and safe environments. And we organize meaningful activities like movie nights, birthdays, celebrations, and some field trips that include visits to the zoo, the Royal Tyrrell Museum, and the Cloudlands, which was one of the most recent ones. During these outings, our child and youth staff and family support coordinators are there to model and support positive parenting and that family interaction. And so we're excited to also be piloting a new education role at the end of this year, and this will help us to support children and youth in the learning and bridging some of the gaps and encouraging educational growth during their time with us. Which brings me to the family support. So it's actually intertwined into two different sections. The family support coordinator, the first section focuses on that early intervention, which we know is very important to, that reducing that intergenerational factors and whatnot. So we all implement the ages and stages, which is a developmental screening tool that helps that early childhood growth and milestone tracking. It supports healthy families and relationships and positive parenting practices, empowering them caregivers and their parents through practical strategies and encouragement. And it's tailored to the unique needs of each family, fostering resiliency and long-term success. It also provides one-on-one developmental support, helping families navigate early childhood needs and connects families with valuable community resources, ensuring holistic and accessible care. The second part of the family support is actually the new pilot project that we're kind of initiating here. And that's recognizing that, not all families are able to attend local schools here in Strathmore. So if they're out of the Golden Hills division, a school system, they're not able to attend. So then we have our teacher, Vicky, who is piloting this program and providing, that welcoming and nurtured, inspired classroom or room to help, it's a calming space that focus on the foundational skills of literacy and numeracy, encouraging curiosity, creativity, and exploring in a supportive environment. So, and it aims to provide equitable educational opportunities, especially for children in transition or facing barriers to traditional schooling. Family support has actually served about 89 families. And with the pilot program, we aim to expand our reach even further, as well as collaborating with our child and youth program as well. And speaking of the child and youth program, we have the rec room, which is a warm, welcoming space designed with early childhood and trauma-informed care in mind. It's a place where kids can just be kids, playing and learning and feeling safe. We've supported about 178 children, given them access to safe and fun environment, and provided over 2,914 hours of direct programming, focused to direct on learning and connection. We welcome children for more than, there's been over 1,212 visits to the rec room. Our team works closely with the family support coordinators, and together we offer that wraparound care, supporting both children and their families every step of the way. So if they come into our shelter, it's that holistic approach of, creating that one-on-one early intervention, and at the same time, just letting kids, wind down, because as they experience, the same things that sometimes our parents experience. So it's always important to keep them in mind and letting them be kids and be able to just navigate life a lot easier as well. And then, so that brings us to the sort of like the next steps and the wraparound supports that we have. So True North offers comprehensive wraparound services, working closely with community partners to ensure holistic support for our clients. True North has successfully discharged 158 clients with personalized safety plans, completed over 46 danger assessments, and made 439 referrals to essential community resources. We know that sometimes resources are hard to find, but we've been able to collaborate with new partners, including Kickstand, to help all of our families just navigate things further.
So what is next for our clients? So after they've gone through the residential program, and having those experiences with rising inflation and a shortage of affordable housing, after their average stay of 31 days in our shelter, survivors are faced with the struggle to find safe and affordable housing. So in our last fiscal year, just over 50% of our clients achieved some type of stable housing, either through ownership, rental, shared accommodation, or subsidized housing. 24% have moved to unstable housing with family and friends or couch serving, while over 17% of our clients risk houselessness, having experienced being in a homeless shelter, staying at a motel or hotel or a vehicle or even a tent. So during their stay with us, True North does our very best to support survivors as they navigate this housing crisis, and we really do depend heavily on our partnerships to connect survivors with the services they need when they're leading our program. But we have to recognize that the growing complexity of survivor needs puts strain on an already strained system. But as Courtney said, in response to this housing crisis, we are developing Finding Your True North, an innovative, affordable housing project. Finding Your True North will feature safe accommodation and trauma-informed programming for those who have experienced abuse. With client-centered programming, our housing solution will play a vital role in addressing the intersectional challenges of relationship violence and homelessness, and support individuals as they rebuild their lives after violence. We're closer than ever to piloting this program and remain hopeful and excited about its progress. Some other highlights from the year. So in 2023, we signed our MOU with Siksika Nation to create a stronger and collaborative partnership. So what does that look like? Last year, we invested more in supporting Indigenous community development, supporting Indigenous-led campaigns such as Red Dress Day and National Indigenous Peoples Day. We undertook more professional development. We visited Blackfoot Crossing, undertook more Indigenous learnings, and most recently, Gayleen Rain led our staff in making ribbon skirts. In our residential program, we offer survivors sweetgrass and smudging opportunities, traditional crafts, and elder circles. Last year, we served 30 Indigenous identifying survivors, made 173 referrals to Indigenous supports, and provided 20 culture-specific services residentially. Last year, we also signed a memorandum of understanding with Trellis, a family resource network in the Strathmore and Chestermere area that provides support to youth and families. Through our Teen Drop partnership, we designed to provide safe and supportive, engaging spaces for teens, improve teen access to resources and support, build positive relationships with and among teens, and improve teen participation in activities. This partnership is a foundational element of our prevention efforts that works to reduce the occurrence of abuse by promoting and modeling healthy, respectful relationships. Teen Drop-In has become a staff and a community favorite, as one of our previous child and youth workers has reflected, and this is a paraphrasing, the same familiar faces will walk through the Trellis doors each week, whether it's learning to cook a meal, picking up a hammer for the first time, or playing a few rounds in Mario Kart. These moments create a space where teens can breathe, laugh, and just be. It's a highlight of my week to be a part of these moments. They are a reminder of the impact of welcoming space can have. So as you can see, we have a lot to be grateful for in this past year, but there's so much more happening behind the scenes for us to celebrate. Each day, survivors reach out to True North from different communities with different needs, different obstacles, and different goals for the future. We recognize the capacity of each of these humans to find their strengths and exert their autonomy along their journey. This last year, 81% of survivors reported improved feelings of confidence and self-esteem after leaving our residential program. 82% of these survivors reported an improved understanding of healthy boundaries. And in our community programming, we reached over 2,700 people. So that's through our workshops, presentations, and our community events. So as helpers, our future is bright. I'll leave you with a quote from our participant from our residential program. This is a direct quote. I am very grateful for your support and having patience with me. Truly, I am grateful for you and giving me the time to get me on my feet again. Being heard and listened to is a first for me, and it is amazing to see that I am cared for. So that's the wrap up of our report to the community. Thank you so much for being here and participating.